There's no doubt Returnal is challenging and it can definitely get frustrating, but it gets way easier once you wrap your head around how the game is supposed to be played. And one of the biggest game changers is knowing how to leverage all the items that will literally give you a second chance when you die on a run by bringing Selene back to life. One of the absolute best ones is the Astronaut artifact, which you unlock by interacting with the house in Biome 1. Its description says it doesn't want to let you go, which means it gives you a second life. So the Astronaut is really valuable, and once you unlock it, you'll often find it available to craft at fabricator stations. And later on, by doing more house sequences, you'll actually unlock another artifact that does the exact same thing called the Child's Watch. But you won't find the Astronaut or Child's Watch on every run, so you also need to know about the Shatterskin parasites, which guarantee you can survive a killing blow. Not quite the same as bringing Selene back to life, but still really valuable. Of course, the downside with parasites is that they come with some kind of negative effect as a trade-off. With a Shatterskin, it might be something like you get 2 malfunctions when it saves you from a killing blow. And yes, malfunctions can be pretty bad, but getting a couple is still a lot better than losing your entire run. At least you have a chance to keep going, so it's pretty much always worth picking up a Shatterskin if you find one. But you won't necessarily find a Shatterskin on every run either, so there's still one last way to come back from death, and you can find this one in every biome: the Reconstructor. This strange device costs 6 of the Ether resource to activate, and it will ensure you get another chance if you die. The catch is the Reconstructor only works for the biome you're currently in, so if you activate it in Biome 1 and then go on to Biome 2 or further, the Reconstructor in Biome 1 won't do you any good. You have to find it again in further biomes and spend another 6 Ether to activate it. But I don't actually recommend you try to activate the Reconstructor in every biome. Generally, it's best to only activate it if you still need to clear the current biome or beat its boss and you don't have any other ways to come back to life. But honestly, if the run isn't looking great and you're not feeling confident you'll be able to put the second life to good use, you might want to just not activate the Reconstructor and save the 6 Ether, because Ether is one of the few things that carries over from run to run, and it's really valuable for more important things that we'll talk about in a minute. But what if you've stacked multiple life-saving mechanics? Which ones get used first? Well, the order goes Astronaut/Child's Watch first, then the Shatterskin Parasite second, and then the Reconstructor activates last. But on top of those life-saving items, there are a bunch of healing and shielding items too. Of course, you've got Silphium, which is your basic healing resource, but then you've also got Silphium Resin, which looks very similar, but instead of healing you, it'll fill up one of these 3 bars down here next to the health bar. When you fill all 3 of those, Selene's max health, technically called her integrity, will increase, and she'll also heal up a bit. So in the long run, resin is actually more important than regular Silphium. And when you're already at max integrity, aka max health, all the regular Silphium you come across will actually be converted into resin. Oh, and remember in biomes 1 and 4, you can go back to the ship once per run and sleep in the back, which will heal you up a bit for free. But you might also come across a room with this sort of stone bed-like thing. That's the Inert Reclaimer, and it's awesome to find because it gives you a chunk of healing and increases your max integrity for free. No downside to it at all. Well, except that sometimes after you use it, a few enemies will spawn in the room with you, so be ready to fight right after using it. Similarly, at the fabrication stations, you'll often find an Integrity Augment upgrade. This increases your max integrity and heals you, but it's almost always going to cost something like 325 Obolites. It is usually worth buying that, but you should check what else is available at the fabricator first. For example, if you already have some integrity upgrades, sometimes it actually makes more sense to buy an Astronaut or even just a Silphium vial. You can also sometimes find the Emergency Repairs artifact at fabricators, which automatically heals Selene back into the green when she's in the red. Very valuable. And there's actually a parasite that does this too, called the Slow Stitch. As long as its negative effect isn't too bad, a Slow Stitch is almost always worth picking up. The Shield Vial consumable is really valuable too. These give Selene a shield around her suit that blocks a single hit for any amount of damage. And you should know that you'll get a free shield when you reach level 5 Adrenaline. Adrenaline builds up from 0 to 5 as you kill enemies, but it resets as soon as you take any amount of damage. Level 1 gives Enhanced Overload, which nearly doubles the size of your weapon's overload window. Overload is when you hit the R2 trigger on a controller or left click on a mouse while the weapon's recharge bar is inside this box, and doing a successful overload will instantly reload reload your weapon. Level 2 Adrenaline allows you to see enemies through walls, marking them with an orange circle. Level 3 enhances melee attack damage. Level 4 gives a 50% boost to proficiency gained from kills. We'll talk more about proficiency later. And level 5 boosts Obolite collection amount and radius by 50% and gives the shield. Now, some experienced players will yell at me in the comments for saying this, but you really don't need to stress about keeping your adrenaline up when you're learning the game. If you can keep adrenaline up, great, but don't stress about it. It's not that critical. But there's an even better way to get shields, and that's the Resinous Shield artifact, which is arguably one of the best items in the game. This gives you a shield anytime you pick up Silphium resin, which you do all the time. And you could argue an even better artifact is Adrenaline Leech, which gives you health back based on how much damage you deal and how high your adrenaline level is. It goes up to a max of 10% of damage dealt at level 5, which is super helpful. So you'll want to try to unlock those as soon as possible, which brings us to unlocking artifacts. A huge part of getting better at Returnal literally requires that you die a lot, because dying is how you get to unlock powerful new items. And this is where Ether comes in again. Every time you die, you have an opportunity to deposit Ether in Sathonos, the glowy stone obelisk near the ship at the start of a run. And if you can deposit the required amount, Sathonos will give you a random new artifact or consumable item that then becomes permanently unlocked and available to find at fabricators on all future runs. Artifacts give you benefits that you get to keep for your entire run, and certain ones like the Resinous Shield can be huge game changers. But there are a few dozen in the game, and you need to proactively unlock most of them so that they have a chance to spawn in future runs. That's why Ether is so valuable. Every time you die, it's really important that you go deposit Ether in Sathonos, which means you want to try to collect as much Ether as possible on your runs. Your current Ether count is this top number shown right here to the left of the minimap, and you can only carry a max of 30. So if you start getting into the high teens or 20s, definitely don't hesitate to use some to cleanse malignant Obolite chunks, Silphium, or spoiled resin during a run. I generally don't recommend cleansing containers since you don't know what you're going to get and it's rarely worth the cost, and I also don't really recommend cleansing keys very often. But definitely the best use of Ether is saving it to deposit it in Sathonos. That said, I usually like to sit on at least a few Ethers so I can make sure I have 6 by the time I get to a biome where I might want to activate the Reconstructor. But Ether's not the only resource you're going to find, and when you're first starting out, it can be a little hard to keep track of them all. So it helps to keep an eye on the little notes that pop up above the minimap when you pick up an item to learn what's what. But the minimap itself is even more important to pay attention to. It's the best way to quickly find and identify all the loot in a room and make sure you don't miss anything. That one extra bit of resin or finding a better weapon can sometimes make all the difference in a run, so thoroughly looting is really important. For Ether specifically, it's shown as this pink icon on the minimap. And of course, for a better view, you can open up the full-size map where you can rotate and zoom in. But the minimap is also helpful in combat because it marks enemies with red triangles so you can get a sense of where they are. Another resource you'll want to look out for are Atropian keys, which are shown as these little triangle icons on the map. Keys open locked doors and containers, and your key count is the middle number next to the minimap. You generally don't want to spend keys on containers though. It's better to spend them on locked triangle doors, which you can see on the map as triangles with the inside filled in. While rectangle doors on the map are the main path, triangle ones are side rooms and side paths, which often contain lots more loot, so it's a good idea to explore as many as you can. Sometimes you'll also come across resources blocked behind a golden energy barrier. These are very similar to the red barriers, which you just need to slice with the blade to destroy, but for gold ones you need an artifact called the Blade Balancer before you can slice them open. So definitely keep an eye out for the Blade Balancer at fabricators. In Biome 1, you'll also find there are often high ledges you can't get up to. Some simply require a permanent unlock that you'll get once you clear Biome 2, but you'd be surprised how many you can actually get up to by using the hanging tentacles. The tentacles won't actually deal damage unless they reel Celine all the way up to the top, so you can let them lift her up high enough and then just dash to escape and land on the high platform. But you'll also sometimes find gold rectangle doorways, and those are optional challenge rooms. Well, except for the Biome 5 one, that one's required, but all the other challenge rooms are optional, and they do contain a lot of good loot if you can beat them, but they're pretty tough. So if you're still learning the game, it's better to just avoid gold doors. But the gold you don't want to avoid are Obolites. While Ether is a currency that transcends runs, Obolites only stick around for your current run, and you need as many as possible so you can buy artifacts like the Astronaut, upgrades like integrity augments, and consumables like Silphium vials from fabricators. Your current Obolite count is the bottom number here left of the minimap, and the most common source for Obolites is killing enemies. So right after killing an enemy, you want to get in there quick to make sure Selene hoovers them up because they disappear pretty fast. Of course, avoiding damage is more important, but try to get in there and get your Obolites when you can. Enemies mostly just drop Obolite, but they can sometimes drop other resources too, and you might find some parasites and other items that say they boost the chance for enemies to drop Salvage. Salvage means Obolites and all other resources, just so you know. And you're also going to come across pools of water with loot at the bottom. Do not go in the water. It won't end your run, but Selene will take a chunk of damage before respawning the same way she does if you fall into the abyss. You will eventually get the ability to get those resources in the water, and it'll be obvious when you get it, but it comes from a higher level biome, so until then, avoid water. In Biome 1, you'll also want to keep an eye out for statues with glowing eyes, which you can break for some guaranteed Obolites. And in Biome 2, you can do the same thing with these glowing rocks. Breaking the weird purple plant pod things back in Biome 1 can also give you Obolites, along with some other items like Silphium and parasites. And the same thing is true with the plant pods you'll find all throughout Biome 4. There are actually quite a few of those plant pods around the starting room in Biome 4 that you can farm up before heading out on a new run too. And the roots in Biome 4 will also drop Obolites, but only if you melee them with the blade. Also, every once in a while, you'll enter a room that has these golden squid guys, and anytime you see them, you want to destroy them as fast as possible. They won't fight back, and they drop a bunch of Obolites, but as soon as you open the door, they head for the sides of the room where they'll disappear, so you need to get to them fast. Collecting Obolites is also one reason it's actually often better to use the blade to melee small enemies. The blade actually does a lot of damage and can one-shot most of the small guys, plus because you're up close, you're basically guaranteed to get all the Obolites when you get a kill. So you definitely want to get in the habit of clearing groups of small enemies with the blade. In fact, you should even melee flying enemies when you can. Just get close under them on the ground and then jump up and do a melee attack. Even if they're a little higher than it looks like you can reach, as long as you're close, Selene will sort of magnetize to them and land the hit. You definitely don't want to sleep on using the blade. But of course, you're going to need to use your gun a lot, and one of the most important things to understand about gunplay in Returnal is that you actually don't really want to ADS for precise aiming very often. It's actually much more effective to hip fire almost all the time. Enemy hitboxes are big enough that you just don't have to aim that accurately, and hip fire lets you stay more mobile, which is way more important. You'll want to literally just hold down the trigger to auto fire most of the time too. The slower firing weapons are often better if tap fired, and some weapons have to be tap fired, but most weapons will auto fire if you hold down the trigger, and doing so helps you deal damage faster and ensure you don't mess up your overloads. Because if you're spamming tap fire, it's easy to do one extra tap after the clip is empty, which locks you out of being able to do an overload. And remember, overloads give you an instant reload. To make aiming easier, you can crank up the aim assist setting if you want to, and to make reloading easier, it can help to make the reticle size larger and thicker, which makes it easier to see the overload window box. While you're in here, you might want to consider adjusting the sprint setting to auto sprint or one of the other options to make movement a bit easier too. I also like to adjust the stick input minimums so that movement and the camera rotations are a bit more responsive, but if your controller has some stick drift, you might actually want to adjust these in the other direction. I also like to boost the camera rotation speed so I can look around more quickly and combat, and I increased the brightness setting a little bit to make it easier to see in some of the dark corners of certain biomes. I also remapped the melee attack to R1 instead of square so that my thumb can stay on circle for dash at all times. And I also put use consumable on D-pad up because I find I accidentally hit L1 by accident sometimes, and burning a consumable by mistake in this game is not fun. But what's way more important than your aim is your movement. You should always be moving, either circling enemies or weaving through their waves of attacks. You'll find that even without dashing, you can typically sprint your way out of the line of fire for most attacks. And when you do dash, it's usually best to dash through projectiles. The dash has invincibility frames for its entire animation, so it's perfectly safe to dash through attacks, and getting through them is usually the best way to get yourself into a safer position. However, you can't dash through purple attacks, which you'll encounter in later biomes. Purple attacks have to be avoided or jumped over, but like 90+% of attacks in the game can be dashed through, and it's best to try to save your dashes specifically for phasing through attacks as opposed to just using them to move around faster. You'll almost always regret it if your dash is on cooldown when you need to avoid taking damage. Once you unlock the grapple, you should also be using it in combat all the time as well. Similar to the dash, the grapple has iframes the entire time it's reeling Selene in, and it helps you reposition really fast. Grappling around the room, pausing to get some shots in, and then grappling to another spot is a very effective tactic. But if you're dealing with flying enemies, watch for when they start to glow. They'll glow very clearly before they're about to charge you or release a powerful attack, and all you need to do to interrupt them is literally deal any amount of damage. Even the tiniest bit will stop them. So when you've got a swarm of flying enemies, if you can't melee them, try to keep focusing the ones that are glowing to stop them from doing their more powerful and annoying attacks. And if you're getting overwhelmed by a fight at any point, remember you don't actually have to take out all the enemies. You can just head for the door and continue on, or at least take a breather before diving back in. You can also peek through doorways if you need to more safely engage. Almost all enemies are restrained to the room they spawn in, although there are a few that can phase through doors and follow you. I don't want to spoil them all for you, but it's the more humanoid looking ones. Also, don't be like me and forget to use your weapon's alt fire all the time. Your alt fire is your strongest attack, and you should absolutely use it whenever you can. You do an alt fire by holding down the left trigger all the way and firing with right trigger. On keyboard and mouse, it's just a right click. The alt fire operates on a recharge timer, with the indicator down here near your dash recharge indicator, but you can also listen for the sound effect that indicates when the alt is up again. There are 10 weapons and 11 alt fires, and any weapon can have any alt fire. They're not weapon specific. As you get used to them, you'll find that a weapon's alt fire will often factor into your decision to pick it up or not. Some of the better and more versatile ones are Tracker Swarm, Void Beam, Blast Shell, Kill Sight, Doombringer, and Shield Breaker. And you should also know that you can actually tap fire Void Beam in short bursts, which can be very effective if an enemy is moving around a lot. In addition to alt fires, weapons also have traits, which add additional bonuses. You can see exactly what each trait does by picking up a weapon, opening up the menu, and selecting the trait to get its description. A weapon can have up to 4 traits at once, but it depends on its level. Level 0 to 4 weapons can only have 1. Level 6 to 14 can have 2, 15 to 24 can have 3, and 25 or higher can have 4. When you find a new weapon, its level is determined by Selene's current proficiency level, which is down here under her integrity bar. You increase proficiency by killing enemies and collecting calibrators during a run, and it maxes out at 30. But honestly, you don't need to worry too much about proficiency level. You'll rarely get close to 30, and you really don't need to. It's not like you need max level weapons to take out the bosses, and they wouldn't even help you that much. Again, movement is far more important than a weapon's power. That being said, if you're trying to decide between 2 weapons and the alt fires and traits aren't making the choice obvious for you, weapons do also have 3 stats you can compare, and by far the most important one is bonus damage. That's basically the weapon's power or damage stat. So if you've got 2 weapons that are comparable on all other metrics, you should take the one with higher bonus damage. But while the 11 alt fires can show up on any weapon, the pool of traits available on each weapon type are unique. There are 9 traits for each, and they're split into 4 groups, but the more important thing to understand about traits is that you need to unlock many of them by finding a weapon with a trait that says 0%, and then killing enough enemies while you have that weapon equipped. Traits come in level 1, 2, and 3 versions, with higher kill requirements needed to unlock higher levels. And trait unlocks are permanent, so once you 100% a trait, you'll be able to find it already unlocked on weapons in future runs. Plus, the progress you make on unlocking a trait also carries over. So even if you only get a trait 50% unlocked before you die, next time you find that trait, it'll start at 50% unlocked. Of course, you'll find certain weapons that you like better than others, but all 9 truly are viable for any part of the game. Even the sidearm can be really good once you unlock some of its best traits. Although, I would definitely not want to go with a short-range weapon like the Spitmaw for the Biome 3 boss, but that's like the one exception. However, if I had to recommend one weapon, it would be the Electro Pylon Driver, or EPD. The EPD is really good because when you hit enemies with its pylons, they deal damage over time. So it's very easy to get a couple shots on the enemy and then run for cover while your pylons damage the enemy for you. A good rule of thumb is, when in doubt, if you've got the option, pick up an EPD. Normally you won't have access to the EPD until you find it in a later biome, but if you've got the deluxe edition, it's actually available in Biome 1 right from the start, which is honestly kind of pay to win. It really does make things a lot easier. But even if you don't have the deluxe edition, once you find any weapon in a later biome, it becomes available in all earlier biomes for future runs. You should also know that once you defeat the boss in each biome, you don't have to fight them again in your future runs. You can just bypass them and go to the next biome. Plus, you'll reach a checkpoint once you reach biome 4. So if you die after getting to biome 4, you'll start from biome 4 instead of going all the way back to biome 1. Also, once you roll credits, there's actually quite a bit more you can get from the story by doing additional runs through the main game to search for special objects I don't want to spoil for you, and by heading to the Tower of Sisyphus, which is accessed from the starting room in biomes 1 and 4. But there's a bunch more combat and exploration tricks, like a blade cancel that makes melee combat even better, super long jumps so you can move around faster, and a secret way to quickly find the button locks that open up the gates. I've got all those and a bunch more for you in this video right here. Thanks to my friends Dusky and also Square for helping get all the best tips in here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you over in that video in just a second.